Good evening. I'm Robert MacNeil in New York.
And I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington. After our summary of the news this Thursday, a Marine general briefs us on the rescue of the downed pilot in Bosnia. Rod Minett reports on the militia of Montana. Two congressmen debate doing away with the income tax, and essayist Richard Rodriguez talks about aliens.
Major funding for the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM, supermarket to the world. And by New York Life, yet another example of the wise investment philosophy New York Life has been following for the last 150 years. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
U.S. Marines today rescued the F-16 pilot who was shot down in Bosnia last week. Captain Scott O'Grady's plane was hit by a Serb missile during a routine NATO patrol in northern Bosnia. Today he was airlifted to the USS Kearsarge in the Adriatic and is reported in good condition with only a slight burn. He is also suffering from exhaustion and exposure. O'Grady survived on rainwater and bugs while hiding from Serb forces for 6 days. President Clinton spoke about O'Grady's release today at the White House.
His bravery in the face of great danger and uncertainty is an inspiration to all of us. I can tell you that having followed this almost hour by hour for the last 6 days, when he gets back here and tells the whole story, it will be an astonishing story indeed. He was well trained and well prepared, but he also rose to an extraordinary challenge. I also want to say how very proud I am of the skill of all of those who took part in the operation to rescue him and those who supported them. They proved once again, all these people, that our country has the finest armed forces in the world, and we are very, very proud of them and ecstatically happy today.
O'Grady's Marine rescuers were backed up by more than 40 NATO aircraft. Serb officials claimed they were aware of the operation and chose not to intervene. U.S. officials said the rescue helicopters were fired on, but no one was injured. We'll have more on the story right after the news summary. Meanwhile, the Serbs agreed to reopen land routes into Sarajevo so that humanitarian aid could reach the capital. And in Washington, the House voted to lift the arms embargo against the Bosnian government. The non-binding measure passed by a vote of 318 to 99. Jim?
House Republicans today announced a plan to dismantle the Department of Energy. It would take away the department's cabinet status and eliminate it completely in 3 years. They estimate it will save as much as $20 billion over 5 years. Energy Secretary Hazel O'Leary called the move politically motivated.
The House of Representatives today voted to cut foreign spending by $3 billion over the next 3 years. The vote was 222 to 192. The bill abolishes 3 foreign policy agencies, their work to be taken up by the State Department. The only major aid programs unaffected would be those for Israel and Egypt. President Clinton has threatened a veto. Secretary of State Christopher voiced optimism about the Mideast peace process today. The Secretary arrived in Israel for a new round of peace talks. He declared that the cycle of war and terror in the Mideast is ending, but he also said further progress must be made before next year's elections in Israel and the U.S. Christopher will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Rabin and Egyptian President Mubarak tomorrow in Cairo. 3 men were arrested in New York City today for allegedly trying to sell nuclear materials to federal agents posing as Iraqi officials. Customs officials said they seized at least 7 tons of the metallic element zirconium, which is used in nuclear reactors. The alleged sale would violate the U.S. trade embargo against Iraq.
Mickey Mantle got a new liver today. The transplant operation was performed on the former baseball star at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. Doctors said he came through the surgery well. Mantle was placed on the transplant list Tuesday after being diagnosed with liver cancer. He's 63 years old. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to the pilot rescue, the Montana militia, throwing out the tax system, and a Richard Rodriguez essay. The rescue of Scott O'Grady in Bosnia was the big story of this day. The Air Force pilot had been shot down over Bosnia Friday. A Marine Corps rescue force from the amphibious assault ship Kearsarge plucked him out and to safety this morning. The Marines had been in training for a possible rescue of the 29-year-old captain since his plane was downed by a Bosnian Serb missile. The rescue mission took off from the ship after dawn and headed for the rescue site nearly 80 miles away. They returned less than an hour later. Captain O'Grady was rushed into the sick bay for observation. Rescuers said their training had paid off.
They did exactly what they've been trained to do, trap, locate the pilot, recover him, and get back on the helo with all their gear, personal accountability, and, of course, the pilot. We've trained real hard for this type of mission. The men performed very well. They went in and did exactly what we needed to do to save a pilot's life today.
Problems would be associated with Bosnia would be any different than we experience any place. We're pretty capable of overcoming problems. That's what we do.
Joining us now is Brigadier General Terrence Murray, Director of Public Affairs for the U.S. Marine Corps. He previously commanded a Marine Expeditionary Unit similar to the one that carried out today's mission. General, welcome.
Thank you.
Must be a lot of happy people in the Marine Corps and the military today.
Very happy. We're very proud of the Marines and sailors and airmen who participated.
In general, could it have gone any better?
No, as you noted, I was a MU commander, and one of the criteria...
A MU commander, that's one of the...
Excuse me, a Marine Expeditionary Unit commander, just like Marty Burnt's unit. I commanded one on the West Coast, and one of the criteria, the standards that you try to achieve in your training is flawless execution, and we would often smile, given the circumstances, even in a training environment, that you had to execute a mission and do it flawlessly. And I don't know that we ever achieved that in a training environment, but it seems today that the 24th MU may have done it flawlessly in Bosnia.
Yeah. Well, look, let's go through that. From the very beginning, when and how was it confirmed that Scott O'Grady was in fact alive and there, ready to be rescued?
I can give you the MU commander's perspective of this. He developed the mission, and his BLT commander was the mission commander.
But Battalion Landing Team.
Battalion Landing Team commander was the mission commander. He received a heads-up, a warning order, probably an alert order at about 0300 his time in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
This morning?
This morning,
his time. So that's about 12 hours before the East Coast got it, right? I mean, aren't they about 12 hours ahead of us?
About
or
6 hours.
6 hours. 6 hours.
About
Okay,
6 hours.
Sorry, okay.
So about 3 in the morning, he was told, stand by, was called by Admiral Smith, the Sink South, and told, we think we may have located the pilot. How soon can you be ready to execute an extract? He had had a recovery team standing by probably for the last 5.5 days. And his response was, I need 60 minutes, and I need an air package that will provide suppression of enemy air or enemy ground fire in the event that we execute the mission. So his response was, I can do it within an hour, and in effect, from 03 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, his crisis action team, along with the Navy counterparts, planned the mission, probably refined the mission, a mission that they'd been planning for about 5.5 days, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours after he was told, be prepared to execute, he was given the execute order, and they launched at 5 in the morning. We're in the air for about 45 minutes. With
80 miles, right, from the Kearsarge to the ground?
It's about, the figures Marty Burnt and I talked early this morning, about 87 miles from the ship to the objective area. They launched from the ship about 5 in the morning, circled the amphibious ready group for 45 minutes. They launched with a 6-ship package of aircraft, 53 Echoes, which are assault helicopters.
Big helicopters.
Large helicopters.
They will haul about 20 people
About
each.
20 per. Additionally, 2 Cobras, which are shooters, effectively gunships with cannons.
Also helicopters.
Also helicopters. Right. 2 gunships with cannons and rockets aboard. And
Were they above them, in front of them, or on the side?
They would normally be out in front.
Out front.
They would normally be out in front, and additionally, a section of Harriers, which are the short takeoff and landing fixed-wing aircraft that we use from the amphibious ships to bring in close air support. And in effect, they were probably trimmed with 500-pound bombs. So that was a 6-plane package. They launched from the ship.
Flying in formation.
Flying in formation. Like the Harriers probably well up in the sky. The assault helicopters and the gunships probably relatively low, nap of the earth. They were also joined by F&A 18s, Marine Hornets out of Aviano, one or two
that's
sections.
the air base in Italy.
That's right.
The NATO air base in Italy.
That's right.
Okay.
Probably one or two sections of Hornets and an EA-6B section that was launched from the Teddy Roosevelt.
Now, what's that?
The EA-6B is designed to jam enemy SAMs and the
missiles,
the missiles, surface-to-air missiles.
Right.
And the Hornets are designed to kill those missile sites. So they spent about 45 minutes in the air putting this whole package together, and about 5:40.
Meaning they were all coming from different ships.
That's right.
Or different stations. They met in the air.
They met in the air.
Took 45 minutes to do that.
That's right.
And then they headed to Bosnia.
About 5:45, they launched for the beach. Probably about 6 in the morning. Marty said that the sun was just coming up as they crossed the beach, and it was his preference, would have been his preference to execute the mission at night for security purposes, but they assessed the risks, and Admiral Smith said, let's do it. They were over the objective area about 6:40 in the morning. En route, an AWACS aircraft vectored the recovery
And AWACS
mission.
is a big communications, about the size of a 747 or a 707, right? How big it's a huge
about that size.
Yeah, big
Right,
airliner. Yeah, it's
very,
got communications equipment in it. Yeah.
Very sophisticated communications equipment. They vectored the recovery force into the objective area.
And he guided them in there.
Guided them in. They gave them a location.
And they were picking up signals from O'Grady, is that right?
That's right.
And what kind of radio did he have?
He had a small handheld radio, probably what we call a VHF or UHF, line-of-sight radio, relatively limited distance that you can communicate with it. You can't communicate through mountains, but if you got a plane up above and the plane can see you, generally you can communicate with
Battery operated, obviously.
Battery operated.
Handheld.
Handheld.
Part of his equipment. In other words, when he ejected from that airplane, this radio was on him, right?
That's
He didn't
right,
have to say, oh, where's my radio? It was
That's right.
just part of the deal.
Probably had it affixed to his uniform when he hit the ground.
And then he communicated with some kind of NATO airplane, did he not? That's how they knew they were. That's how y'all knew he was there.
Yes, sir. Marty Burnt, the MU commander, said that the first contact was made by the AWACS. That's the best information I had, that they made the first contact with the pilot. And in fact, for the MU commander, it wasn't until they were relatively close to the objective that the recovery package had come with the aviator on the ground.
Okay. Now, take us down to the ground. What happened then?
They flew in low level, probably 100 to 200 feet off the ground. And as they approached the objective area, Marty Burnt said about 5 minutes out, they sent the Cobras forward, the two shooters, the helicopter shooters.
Daylight now, they can see. They've got line of sight. The weather was clear, right?
Relatively clear, although when they came back out, they ran into some fog and some cloud cover. But they sent the gunships forward, in effect, to recon the objective. And then 5 minutes later, the assault aircraft, the two 53 Echoes, went in. And about 6:45 in the morning, they actually put the section of 53s on the ground as they approached.
These are the two helicopters with the 40 Marines, 20 in each.
That's right.
Right.
As they approached the zone, Marty Burnt said the pilot must have popped a yellow smoke, which is standard routine when you run a recovery operation. In effect, what he was trying to do was to pinpoint his location on the ground. And so a yellow smoke was popped. It was a high hilltop that he was on, heavily covered except for the landing zone that they went into, heavily covered with pine trees. And they got on the ground, and the pilot...
Just those two helicopters. The rest of them remained covering the operation,
That's right.
did they not? The Cobras kept circling?
They would have been circling the objective area, and the Harriers would have been up at altitude, circling, standing by in the objective area.
Okay, now, this landing site was obviously selected by O'Grady, right?
It was.
He went from wherever his plane, wherever he landed. Is it known now that he obviously parachuted and landed somewhere, right?
That's right, sir.
And then he found this zone and knew this was and said, hey, this is where you can rescue me.
That's right, sir. He spent 5.5 days evading anyone that might have been in the area, Serbs or civilians for that matter. It was a remote area. He had picked a very good spot, plenty of room for the two 53s to get in, and popped the smoke. They went in. They were on the ground about 2 minutes. Marty Berndt estimated.
2 minutes. Now, what was going on in those 2 minutes?
As soon as the first helicopter hit the deck, the Marines deployed, set up a security perimeter.
The Marines are armed. How were they armed? Were these combat Marines?
These are combat Marines from the battalion landing team. Mission commander was Lieutenant Colonel Gunther, the battalion landing team commander. So they had roughly a 40-man team. Probably 25 of those were trigger pullers, were Marines with M16s and machine guns. When the first plane went into the zone, the Marines on the first plane, probably 20, offloaded, established a perimeter around the LZ.
The landing zone.
The landing zone. Mm-hmm. Even before the second aircraft went in first and initially was on some tough ground, some rocks, so they repositioned the second aircraft. And as they repositioned it, the Marines had secured the ground. Marty Berndt said he saw the pilot running from a tree line with a helmet, pistol in hand, and on a dead run in his flight suit.
And they pulled him on this one helicopter, and then they both took off at the same time?
That's right, sir. He came in. There's a side door forward on the 53. He jumped in the door. Apparently, smile on his face. Marty said that he collapsed from exhaustion and probably emotion when it occurred. And total time on the deck was about 2 minutes. They immediately lifted off. They had taken no fire in the zone, and they began...
going in, no fire.
Going in.
No fire while they were on the ground.
That's right, sir.
All right, now, then what happened?
So they lifted off and began the extract route back to the Ark. Again, it was about...
Back to the Ark, meaning
the amphibious ready group.
Ship,
Excuse me.
Okay.
Too many acronyms. They started back for the ship, about a 45-minute transit. They had flown in low level. They flew back low level, with the exception that they ran into some fog and weather, went up and then came back down. And probably during the last third of the segment of the trip that was done over ground, they took at least one or more missiles were fired from the ground. Small arms fire, sporadic, as they made the transit to the water. I believe, as it was reported to us, that only the door gunner on the first 53, on the first helicopter, actually engaged one or more of the targets that were on the ground, and
actually fired some rounds at them.
That's right.
Yeah, but the Cobras didn't. The Cobras didn't fire.
To our knowledge, did not.
All right. What were the orders that these folks were under? Let's say that the Serbs had really combated this, had really said, no way you're going to get that pilot out of there. What were their orders? What kind of firefight could we have had on our hands?
When a package like that is launched, they go in there with enough firepower, sufficient firepower, to handle any situation that they may be confronted with. Needless to say, they had a fairly good intelligence assessment done aboard the amphibious ready group, and there were national asset capabilities that were used to add to the intelligence picture that they had. But in effect, you didn't have a large force. There's always a judgment call. If you go in with too large a force and you get too heavily engaged, you always have the potential of leaving more people on the deck than you would like to have done. So they probably...
So the only Americans who were on the ground at this particular time were those 41 Marines plus the pilots of the helicopters, right?
That's right.
And everybody else was still able, if something had gone wrong, they could have done one of two things: come to the other people's rescue or gotten out of there, right?
That's right.
And who would have made who makes those kinds of decisions?
Well, the mission commander is in contact with the amphibious ready group. They had aircraft above. The Harriers were above, prepared to support. They had a forward air controller who was in position on the ground to call in the Harriers in the event that they needed close air support. In addition, offshore, as soon as they launched the recovery team that actually made the extract, they stood up a second recovery team on board the Kearsarge. So in the event they had a problem, they had at least another recovery team ready to come in behind them. And then
to pick up whatever pieces needed to be picked up.
That's right.
I see. What do you make of this report that the Serbs said, oh, well, we knew this was going on and we just decided not to interfere? Does that make sense to you?
I can only give you a personal opinion. I think it's nonsense. If they could have thought they could have taken American hostage, that would have been tremendous negotiating bait for them, and I believe that's nonsense.
And to have pulled the United States into this would have been a terrific thing, you mean?
Absolutely. And I
From
think,
their point of view.
Absolutely. I think that they were looking very aggressively for that pilot, because a simple investigation of the accident or the crash site, they would have determined that the pilot was not buried with the plane. And so it's my guess that the Serbs were in the area aggressively patrolling, trying to find Captain O'Grady.
Captain O'Grady, what is his condition? What's the latest on his condition?
When he came aboard the aircraft, Marty Berndt described him as being fit. He was
hungry, he hadn't eaten.
Very hungry. They fed him a meal ready to eat, an MRE, en route back to the ship. So he was in good spirits. A burn on the back of his neck, but beyond that.
Now, where did that come from? Where did the burn on the back of the neck come from?
Again, I would speculate in the ejection. How it occurred, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and finally, General, this man survived just because he had been trained how to survive in that kind of situation. Is that really? If they were looking for him, they knew he was alive. They were looking for him, and he had a radio. It's amazing, isn't it, in a way?
I think it really is. If you look at the sequences of events from his effort to evade the Serbs for a period of five and a half days, have the mental capacity to select good ground from which to make an extract, which he did. It was a very remote site. And then to have the boys not to run his radio dry by continuously communicating. He had the presence of mind to do all of that, and then the other ingredients from a preparation standpoint and training standpoint to launch and execute that recovery. In my view, it was spectacular. As I said, you rarely see that kind of execution in a training environment.
All right.
And this was a combat environment.
Well, General, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yesterday, 7 weeks after the Oklahoma City bombing, the Senate passed comprehensive legislation expanding federal laws and procedures to fight domestic terrorism. The attack, which killed 167, focused national attention on paramilitary groups that have been suspected of plotting and carrying out acts of domestic terrorism. Rod Minot of public station KCTS Seattle reports on the militia movement in the Pacific Northwest.
It's a tense time at the militia of Montana.
They are, in fact, screwing with our incoming telephone calls. That's all. Interrupting. Whomever it is that wants to stop this patriot movement.
Inside the command center, angry claims of sabotage and more. Just days after the Oklahoma bombing, John Trockman, co-founder of the militia, says his group was receiving death threats. On the phone with a colleague, Trockman described a meeting he'd set up with the head of the local FBI office to discuss mutual concerns.
And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is the level of threat against him and his office and against us in our office. Now, we've had probably 12, 15 times more threats at our office here than he has at his. But both of us share the same problem.
The threats, Trockman says, have been triggered by unfair news reports linking the militia movement to suspects in the Oklahoma bombing. Trockman raises the possibility that the federal government planted the bomb as a ploy to disarm militias.
We feel as bad about that as we do any other terroristic act in this country. However, we believe that it has the flavor of internal terrorism. The track record of the federal government has not been real good in this country. Their blood spilling day has been April 19th, and this could easily be another one of them.
April 19th is the date of the deadly FBI attack on the Branch Davidian compound near Waco, Texas, 2 years ago. Outrage over that raid and the 1992 bloody shootout in northern Idaho between white separatist Randy Weaver and federal agents led the militia of Montana to organize. From this tiny office, 51-year-old John Trockman, the former owner of a snowmobile parts company, says he and his followers are leading a revolution and are now arming themselves against the federal government.
I don't think they leave us a choice. If they continue on like this, they're the ones that will bring war to us. We will never bring war to them. They will bring it to us.
That kind of talk has authorities on edge, and it's also polarized the small community where Trockman and his militia are headquartered, Noxon, Montana, population 350. This isolated area, once booming with timber and mining, has fallen on hard times. For many here, gun control remains a dirty word, but some say the Montana militia may be pushing the right to bear arms too far.
Well, just don't dig up my onions.
One local who opposes the militia is Joyce Capel, a retired nurse. She and her husband Frank moved to Noxon 12 years ago. She now belongs to a human rights task force that's monitoring the militia.
And basically, I'm a conservative. I'm not a flaming liberal like my son is. But we don't need militias. We have a way to change our government. And we don't need guns and militia and all that business.
But militia members say it's the government that people should be opposing, not those who call themselves patriots. Bob Fletcher, spokesman for the militia, says his group is working to save the U.S. Constitution.
Our message is the preservation of the constitutional Republic of America. We are predominantly educational in nature, and our business here, if you will, is to assist people across the United States that want to set up their own patriot, constitutionally oriented groups. I have personally spoken all over the United States for several years. Every time I've spoken, it's been videotaped. You will find no point in time where we espoused violence.
But that's still not reassuring to skeptics like Bill Wasmith, who is executive director of the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment. His organization tracks the activities of what it calls hate groups in the region. Wasmith says violence is a likely outcome of the extremists' rhetoric.
That paranoia sees enemies everywhere, develops conspiracy theories that identifies those enemies, and in the case of militias, it's concluded that the only way to defend themselves from those enemies is to arm themselves and to confront them by the force of arms. That's a blueprint for disaster. That's a blueprint for violence.
Good morning, Militia Montana.
Wasmith and other human rights activists consider the Montana militia a leading source of conspiracy propaganda in the so-called Patriot movement, an umbrella under which they lump many anti-government groups.
This is the civil rights march of the 90s. It's called We Want Our Constitution Back.
Recently, members of the Patriot movement held a meeting near Seattle. Wasmith and others say the movement is made up of both unarmed anti-government activists as well as armed militias, and is spreading rapidly across the Northwest.
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
At this session, Patriot activists heard an Arizona sheriff and author promote his book opposing gun control. He also urged audience members to join militias, but called them something else.
What you're going to have to do is go back to your neighborhoods and form what they call neighborhood watch groups. Call it that. Use their terminology, okay? You're not a militia, you're a neighborhood watch group. You know, they support that. Well, that's community policing, and Bill Clinton is supporting that all over the place, you know.
Another group Wasmith and his colleagues monitor is the Aryan Nations. These pictures were taken a decade ago at the Aryan compound in northern Idaho. According to its critics, the Aryan Nations is among a growing number of white supremacy groups with ties to the patriot and militia movements.
Hail victory!
Wasmith and other experts say militant racists linked to groups like the Aryans are using some militias to recruit members to the supremacist cause. Wasmuth says white extremists are emphasizing their opposition to gun control and big government, while playing down themes of racial superiority.
The very clearly identifiable racist supremacist groups such as the Klan and the Aryan nations in the Northwest and in the country in recent years have declined. It appears that people have concluded that to dress in racist robes, literally and figuratively, simply doesn't work anymore. That doesn't attract a significant number of people. And
Wasmuth and others claim John Trockman of the militia of Montana has toned down a supremacist message, but they say he's a believer in a racist theology called identity.
It is impossible for somebody to be an identity believer and not be a racist. You either are not an identity believer or you are a racist. There's no other way around it, because identity essentially says that Jewish folks are the descendants of Satan and that people of color are subhuman. That's supremacy.
Trockman denies he's a white supremacist, but acknowledges past visits to the Aryan Nation's compound. Joyce Capel says she recalls Trockman once telling her about his idea of voting rights.
Because he said, our country would be in a great shape if that was the case. That only white male landowners could vote.
But Trockman continues to dispute claims that he and his militia are racist.
But as far as the militia, there's people of all colors in it. There's people of all religions in it. There's people of various political persuasions in it, too, obviously. It's a cross-section of America. We're all in this together. And unless we put away our differences, we're going to lose our country.
Today, Militia of Montana claims thousands of followers across the country and continues to mail out 200 of its militia startup kits a week. The group also publishes a newsletter called Taking Aim. The militia's activities are financed largely by sales of books and videos. Much of their message warns against a new world order, which militia leaders see as consisting of a one-world government, bent on using United Nations troops to seize control of America.
But be warned, the United Nations one-world government will not take the United States of America. They will not take the American patriots, and you better watch out, because we're not going to put up with it any longer.
This one-world government, militia leaders say, plans to suspend the U.S. Constitution, install dictatorship, and confiscate all guns.
This is the same as Adolf Hitler's concept. He used the term New World Order.
Bob Fletcher claims he has documents proving a UN invasion is imminent.
This is a huge Russian Bear bomber our people photographed in Louisiana. Russian short-range chemical and biological frog missiles photographed in Texas and Tennessee.
Some people would think that this is madness. What?
Sorry about that. We didn't bring it in. We agree this is madness. Not madness on our side of the fence. Who the hell's bringing it in here? See?
Fletcher claims it's being brought in by a shadow government made up of corrupt politicians and international bankers. Human rights activists say some of the photographs may indeed show actual Russian military hardware on U.S. soil, but they charge the militias routinely use the photos out of context and fabricate stories. Bill Wasmuth cites one example involving a military surplus dealer in Mississippi.
But the fact of the matter, as I understand it, is that there is a man down there who has this as a legitimate business. He buys Russian equipment and he transforms it and he sells it to the United Nations. That's a legitimate business. There ain't any great conspiracy about UN takeover happening with all of that.
Critics are also disturbed by the type of literature the Montana group sells. Manuals on sniper training and guerrilla warfare that encourage members to stock up on food and guns. John Trockman says he's already stockpiled guns and ammunition in the hills near his 20-acre compound.
Not machine guns. 50 caliber rifles. I've never said machine guns.
Okay, how many do you have up there?
Well, it's not me that has them. The local citizenry has equipment put away.
Hidden?
Yes.
Can you give me an idea of how much weapons might be stockpiled?
No, I really can't. I would be violating their trust.
At what point would they be willing to take up those arms? And what would it take?
If they came after their families, their property, or those arms.
Those arms they claim to have stockpiled would look something like this. As pictured in Jane's book of infantry weapons, the 50 caliber semi-automatic is a sniper rifle. It uses a powerful 6-inch bullet that's capable of piercing armor.
Is that the Australian stuff you have?
Trockman says his Montana group does not conduct paramilitary training. Even so, Bill Wasmith says he's troubled by the weapons and anti-government talk.
Promoting that kind of paranoia, conspiracy theory, vigilantism, take things into your own hands by force, while the leaders of it might be very sincere in believing that they will never be the ones to pull the trigger and shoot somebody, they nonetheless fuel the fires and create a climate in which some of their followers well might, and I think most likely will, step across the line and commit some violence.
Wasmith points to the Aryan nations as an example of what he fears might happen with the militia of Montana. During the 1980s, a splinter group of the Aryans, a terrorist gang known as the Order, committed murder, bombings, and armored car robberies, and what it claimed was the start of a bid to overthrow the government.
I think one of the most important lessons that we drew from the Order is take these folks seriously. Don't just write them off as being somehow people with strange ideas and therefore it'll all go away. That doesn't mean, again, that everybody is a terrorist or that everybody's an extremist or everybody's going to act out violently who has anything to do with militias any more than everybody that was a part of the Aryan nations did that. But take them seriously.
Joyce Capel, the Knoxon retiree who's helped form a watchdog group, says she's taken the militia seriously.
All the folks that I know that live around there have heard a lot of shooting at night. Some of them who can identify automatic fire say they've heard it.
Even so, Capel says John Trockman and his brother David have been good neighbors, but she says she and others remain fearful of the militia's followers.
Their fear is not John and David. John and David wouldn't come and do anything to hurt us. Their fear is the fringe that are attracted. Any kind of a group like this is a power-giving group, and people who haven't been able to cope well in life are attracted to it. Not everybody in there is like that. They are attracted to this getting out and doing all these things. It gives them power.
Capel says organizing opposition has been difficult because neighbors are afraid to speak out against the militia.
I don't feel that concerned, but as one person said, I've invested a lot in my last days here, and she doesn't want to put herself or her home or anything like that at risk.
Scared of what? Paperwork? See, the reason they're scared is because they don't understand what we're all about. They have no idea what the militia of Montana stands for.
The local sheriff says he has seen and heard what the militia stands for, and while he doesn't agree with the group and doesn't consider them a threat now, he says he's still concerned.
I think that's what worries everybody, is the paranoia. Acting spontaneously does have great concern. But I think if everybody just sat back and think about it, mellow out, and quit trying to heat up the situation, I think it'd be okay.
If you want peace, prepare for war.
Despite distributing videos like this, Trockman continues to deny he's promoting violence and insists he's on a mission to rescue the Constitution.
We're all set.
All right, take care. We'll see you.
Many here in Knoxon say they're praying that crusade won't lead to bloodshed.
Now the tax system on trial. Margaret Warner has the story.
One question being asked on Capitol Hill this week is whether the time has come to completely overhaul the nation's tax system. The next question, of course, is what should replace it? Kwame Holman provides some background.
In opening tax reform hearings this week, House Ways and Means Chairman Bill Archer of Texas vowed to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and overhaul the tax code.
In my opinion, our challenge will do no less than pull the current income tax code out by its roots and throw it away so that it can never grow back.
The committee has held 3 tax reform hearings this week, taking testimony from 42 witnesses, including current and former members of Congress, each with his own idea on better ways to pay and collect taxes. The current system is based on so-called progressive taxation. The higher the taxpayer's income, the higher the tax rate. Among the alternatives is a so-called flat tax, which would establish a single rate of taxation for everyone above a certain minimum income level. Popular tax deductions, like the one homeowners get for mortgage interest, would be eliminated or severely cut back under the flat tax. Another proposed reform would have the government raise its revenue by taxing consumption, in effect a tax on spending instead of on income. For example, under a proposed national sales tax, consumers would pay taxes on the goods and services they purchase. Under a so-called value-added tax, or VAT, businesses would pay a tax at each stage of production, eventually passing the levies on to consumers at the point of sale. The Clinton administration has yet to take a position on tax reform, but yesterday, in a sometimes heated exchange, Chairman Archer prodded Assistant Treasury Secretary Leslie Samuels on when the president might be expected to announce something.
So you will not have a proposal for us. You will sit on the sidelines and criticize every proposal that is introduced, whether it be by Mr. Gibbons or by Senator Non-Domenici, or whether it be a proposal ultimately specified by myself. You will sit and you will target those and you will criticize, but you will not come forward with a proposal of your own.
I don't actually think that's what we're doing.
No.
We are not going to sit by and just criticize proposals. We're going to try to tell people what the pros and cons of various proposals are.
Okay, but you will not.
And what we think.
You know, I don't want to belabor it. You will not have a proposal for us. That's what you're saying. Is that correct?
What I've said is that explain to you how we're going to participate in the process at this point in time.
It's a simple thing. Will you have a proposal or will you not have a proposal? It's very simple. A yes or no answer.
Mr. Chairman, we're here to discuss the pros and cons of these various...
That is not responsive.
Despite the urgent tone at some of this week's hearings, passage of sweeping tax reform is considered unlikely this year.
Now our discussion. We're joined by the congressman we just saw presiding over this week's hearings, Ways and Means Committee Chairman Bill Archer, Republican of Texas, and with him a Democratic member of the same committee, Robert Matsui of California. Congressman Archer, you want to abolish all taxes based on income and replace them with the tax based on spending or consumption. Why?
Because the income tax is so broken that I'm convinced it cannot be fixed. We've gone through many, many exercises of trying to reform it, and each time it gets worse. It has become too invasive into the lives of individual citizens. 40 million Americans this year will have a confrontation with the IRS. It costs $300 billion for compliance per year, minimum. It might be as much as $600 billion of compliance, according to Fortune magazine. It does not get at the underground cash economy. These people escape taxes and offload onto all of the rest of us. And it does not help us create savings which are necessary for investment to create higher productivity and greater real earnings for working Americans. It is a deterrent to our ability to compete in a world marketplace where we must win, particularly in the next century, or we will see our standard of living decline in the United States. So I want to tear the income tax out by its roots, as was said earlier, and I want to completely replace it. And I want to put in a tax on goods and services so people then get all of their income and they then have the discretion as to how they want to spend it, and when they spend it, they will then pay their taxes.
Congressman Matsui, where do you come down on this basic division between a tax on income, as we have now, and a tax on spending?
Well, I think we have a responsibility to look at alternatives. I think what Chairman Archer is saying is that there are a number of different proposals that are being floated around now, and certainly we have an obligation to look at them. I think the income tax system has worked well over the years. Obviously, there are problems with it, and the issue is can we fix the income tax system up, or do we need to go to another system? And obviously, what we want to make sure is that whatever proposal we come up with, if in fact it's a change from the current system, that it's revenue neutral. That is, it has the same amount of revenue that the current tax code has, that it's fair, that it's simple, and that it does promote economic efficiency. And we have a long ways to go yet, because there's only been a few proposals that have been actually drafted and put into legislative language. But certainly we're willing to take a look at them. The only issue that I would raise right now is that we have to go somewhat cautious in this area, because to move from the current tax code to another one could disrupt, obviously, individual taxpayers, businesses, certainly the national economy, and it could have a ripple effect throughout the economy that perhaps we're not aware of. But this is something we should look at.
Congressman Archer, let's go through a couple of the reasons you are advocating a tax on consumption rather than income. Explain to me, and all of us, first of all, why would it encourage savings?
Well, it is a zero tax on savings. If you let everyone have their entire paycheck without withholding an income tax, then there's absolutely a zero tax on savings. And it clearly will be a great incentive for savings. Whereas today, when you take money out of people's paychecks, they don't have that to save. One of the witnesses before our committee this afternoon said that basically the current income tax is a family savings tax. And I can't argue with that. That's what it's become. And it has become so onerous in the lives of so many Americans that I personally want to get the IRS completely and totally out of the lives of every individual American.
But are you saying that you think a family that currently now spends almost everything they make after taxes would get, when they got that extra money for not paying taxes, they'd put it in the bank rather than spending it?
They'd sure have the discretion to do so, and I would like to let them have that opportunity. Human nature is such that we make economic decisions every day in the way that we conduct our lives. And if we have all of our paycheck to spend, we clearly are going to have a greater opportunity to save a bigger proportion of it. It is also an exercise in freedom that we eliminate the invasiveness into every individual's life in this country by the IRS. This is a very, very important thing in a country such as ours, where we believe in privacy and we believe in our own individual freedom of not having to be forced to give all this information to the IRS.
Congressman Matsui, what do you think would be the effect on the average taxpayer if they got this extra money? Do you think they would save it?
Well, first of all, I will not say that they'll get this extra money, because a consumption-based tax may eliminate some complexity. In fact, an individual may not even have to file a tax return. But their overall taxes could go up, because the cost of the consumer goods that will be taxed might have a built-in increase in taxes. For example, and again, I don't want to hold Mr. Archer to this, because he doesn't have a specific proposal yet, and so I want to be certainly fair, but a consumption-based tax that has a 14.5% flat rate, according to the Treasury Department. Now, this is not Mr. Archer's proposal, but it is a proposal. It is a suggestion that could be floated around, would increase somebody in the bottom 20% of taxpayers in America about 130% increase in their taxes. Somebody making in the top 1% of the tax category would have a 55% reduction in their taxes. I should have said 130% increase in their taxes for those in the bottom 20%. So you will see a change in the tax system, and that's the issue of fairness that comes into play, and that's why we have to be very careful. It sounds good, because obviously it's much more simple, and it may be much more economically efficient in the long run, although we need to still explore that. But there could be an issue of the redistribution of who pays the taxes in America.
I want to get to that issue of fairness. But first, Congressman Archer, let me just ask one more question on this issue of whether people will really save more. What about Congressman Matsui's point that the average family that already spends all of its income on food and housing or rent, whatever, clothes, books, that all those things would cost 15 or 20% more, depending on what the sales tax was, so there wouldn't be anything left to save?
Well, every decision is made, again, based on the price of a product, including taxes, and taxes are figured in today into the price of products. And people, families, individuals make those decisions every day. If you tax savings to the high degree that we do in this country, and we more heavily tax savings than any other developed country in the world, then you're certainly going to have less of it. If you remove that tax, you're going to get more savings. You make it perhaps a little less attractive to consume and more attractive to save.
And then let me ask you also to respond to Congressman Matsui's point about the fairness question. That is that poorer people and lower middle class people aren't in a position really to save, and therefore that this tax would be regressive. A consumption tax would be essentially regressive.
It's very clear. It's very clear that in order to pass something up here, and I agree with Bob that this isn't something we're going to do this month or next month or in the very short term, because we do need to think it through in all of its ramifications. But I will say that these people will have a greater job opportunity to earn more money. They're going to have more in their paychecks when there's no withholding. And we will have a society where the real level of earnings for families will go up. People will finally be able to realize their dream, which is more real earnings and the opportunity for their children to do even better than they, because we will jump ahead in the world marketplace where we must win the battle, or we will see a decline in the standard of living of all Americans.
Congressman Matsui, does that answer your concerns at all about the fairness issue?
No, I don't think it does, because that presupposes that this system, whatever new system that we might have, will in fact promote significant economic growth, which would put more money in the hands of these people that will end up paying more taxes through a consumption or other kind of tax. And that judgment is out yet. Certainly, most of the economists have said that if it's revenue neutral, it may or may not have a positive effect on the economy. In fact, some might suggest it could have a negative effect on the economy. For example, home ownership, for example, might be such that there may not encourage people to buy homes through a consumption or a flat tax without deductions for home mortgage deductions. And so that could have a negative effect on the construction industry. There's a lot of issues that have to be flushed out. And certainly, however, as Mr. Archer said, I think we need to look at this because the opportunities here, and certainly we shouldn't avoid this issue. I think it's a legitimate issue to look at.
Yeah, well, Bob, in addition, I think any such tax is going to have some credit waiver or rebate system for the very low-income people to accommodate the question that she just asked. And that's going to be incumbent, I think, in anything that we do when we go from where we are to another approach. But on the home part of things, a home is a capital investment. It is not a consumption item. And to me, if you had, for example, a national sales tax, you would not apply it to the purchase of a home. In addition, if we can make America a sponge for savings, not only domestic but foreign, coming in here, we will drive down the cost of money. And the economic...
Explain that briefly, Congressman. Why would more money come in from foreign investors?
Well, because if investors from abroad come in and know that they don't have to pay an income tax, it will be exceedingly attractive. I had one person tell me here in the last week that a large Japanese company said that if we went to a consumption tax instead of an income tax, they'd move their whole international headquarters to the United States of America. There will be tremendous savings that will come into this country, and that will drive the price of interest down by as much as 2 points, 200 basis points. That will make homes far more affordable, particularly for the first-time home buyer.
We're just about out of time.
Now, if I could just respond to that, because now here's what one of the problems is, though, is that there will not be the incentive to purchase a home because it will make it neutral. Many people say that the value of homes could go down 20-30% in that situation. That could have a really negative effect on savings.
Because there wouldn't be a tax deduction.
Yes, there wouldn't be an incentive factor. Again, I don't want to suggest that this will happen. I'm just saying we need to vet these things. We need to look at these things.
I just don't agree with that, and none of the economic studies that I've seen show that to be true.
The National Board of Realtors feels that that will happen, and other economists have said the same thing.
Briefly, Congressman Matsui, do you agree with Congressman Archer's point that it would make the U.S. a great magnet for foreign investment?
Well, I don't think there's any question that if you don't have a tax, it's going to have the effect of bringing in foreign investment. Now, the problem is what about these profits that will go out without being taxed in the United States? That's what our problem is, particularly if it's based upon a consumption.
Very quickly, Congressman Archer, because we're almost out of time, what is your timetable for proposing something?
Well, we're going to continue to pursue this and build on this. We still are awaiting recommendations, for example, from Dick Gephardt, who came as the minority leader and who is willing to engage and participate in this, in contrast to the administration that wants to sit on the sidelines and not give us anything to look at. And we want to let everybody have an opportunity to submit their information. This is a task of great magnitude, and we want to be sure that we're going to do it right in the end. So I don't have an exact timetable right now, but I believe we have a window of opportunity. And I would hope that we could do something certainly in the relatively short term.
Congressman Matsui, briefly, do you agree?
Well, I think this is going to take much longer than one would anticipate. Mainly, first of all, we have to figure out how we're going to move from the current tax system to a new one. Everybody has made judgments and decisions based upon the current tax system. A disruptive effect could occur. People could have winners and losers in terms of their effort in this situation. And so we have to look at this.
Thank you, Congressman Both, that we're out of time. Thanks very much.
You bet.
Again, the major story of this Thursday was the Marine rescue in Bosnia of U.S. pilot Scott O'Grady. The Air Force captain was shot down by a Serb missile last week. Doctors aboard the USS Kearsarge in the Adriatic said O'Grady is in good condition. Good night, Robin.
Good night, Jim. We apologize for not having room for Richard Rodriguez's essay tonight. We'll reschedule it soon. That's the NewsHour tonight. I'm Robert MacNeil. Good night.
Major funding for the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, supermarket to the world. And by New York Life, yet another example of the wise investment philosophy New York Life has been following for the last 150 years. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
Video cassettes of the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour are available from PBS Video. Call 1-800-328-PBS-1.
This is PBS.